has not been pro-life. It's a late conversion that he came to, and by this action, he gets to keep his Republican base from chipping away and running away the way they have been all week. For a few days, maybe. This is part of a titanic struggle that's going on in this country. It has to be seen in the context of what is really Trumpism. And Trumpism, to succeed, is dependent on Republican votes in the Congress. That's why this is a smart move. However, we have hundreds of thousands of people in the streets, and they're going to be in the streets on the issue of abortion, which is the underlying subtext of what we're seeing here, because Roe v. Wade is up for grabs, and this justice is one more way of perhaps overturning Roe v. Wade, and people are in the streets for the reason that 70%, 65% of Americans are pro-choice. Yeah. And so this is not going to satisfy those people.
And to Paul's point, Don, you got to remember, interest groups, outside groups that really dominate. They raise a lot of money. They go on the airwaves on both the right and the left when it comes time for a Supreme Court battle. As Carl was pointing out, there's going to be a battle here. We shouldn't at all give the impression that this is not going to be a hard-fought battle, tough questions at the confirmation hearing, because there's so much vested interest from outside groups to generate their lists, get their partisans revved up. It's a huge recruiting tool.
But also, when you see those folks
but I just want to say, you will also see a lot of kabuki theater with this, because if indeed the pick goes as smoothly as the rollout went tonight, and if indeed nothing really comes up to disqualify him in some way, then you're going to find those groups are doing that not because they think that they're going to ultimately defeat him, but because they are at their battle stations. That's what we see.
So is the challenge with the Democratic Party mostly with the people who are their base now, which I think is who's out there, the millions of people who are out there in the streets protesting?
Yes, and Chuck Schumer is in kind of a tough spot, and he's got to decide whether he wants to play the long game. And the long game is that on this particular nominee, where, as Mark points out, you're not talking about the ideological bounds of the court, where the appointment is a true intellectual and thoughtful and conservative, but a true intellectual. Nobody can say that this man is not qualified, okay? Whether the Democrats take the long view and don't filibuster this one in hopes that by having this man on the court who clerked for Justice Kennedy, that perhaps Justice Kennedy, as Mark points out, who is 80 years old, might decide that he could retire with somebody like that on the court. And then in the next round, whether it's Hardiman or somebody else, then the Democrats can decide to go for it.
But here's the Democrats played the long game with this when they didn't with Merrick Garland, when they didn't push enough on Merrick Garland,
and
they lost.
That's right.
That's right.
That's the biggest problem. This is a recruiting tool on the Merrick Garland question, because Democrats can now go into the streets and say, you hypocrites, we had exactly the same candidate, erudite, a great judge, a great writer, and now you hypocrites have rammed through this, and you wouldn't let the President of the United States, Donald Trump, who preceded you, have his nominee. So this only exacerbates this huge struggle that's going on in the country. And one last point. It's more than Chuck Schumer. The Democrats need leadership from the bottom up, and they don't have it.
I've got one quick question to you, and I want to put this out. This is from Mark Cuban. You know the billionaire Mark Cuban.
Never heard of him.
The man. He says, if Dems are smart, they will ask POTUS what they can get from him in exchange for a quick SCOTUS approval. Negotiate with the negotiator. Talk amongst yourselves.
Here's the deal. It's too easy for it to work. The Democrats, to the point that we're talking about their base right now, Democrats' biggest problem right now is their base. To Carl's point, they don't have leadership at the grassroots level. I would argue there isn't leadership at the top either right now. I mean, there are leaders. You know, we saw Nancy Pelosi carry the message, just now for Democrats, but there's not a new generation right now.
I got to get to the break. Can you be the first voice on the other side of the break? We'll be right back.
Choose to go.